mistake, it really is more about whether the Druid can get through later on.
Oh, yes. That's going to be the real sticking point. So lambyseries, as most players seem to be doing against this full aggro lineup, giving himself the tastier matchup first, saving the worst till last, or at least until later on in the series, giving us a nice wave. Hello, Wesley. Happy to see you too.
Shaxy, with the same outfit as yesterday.
Respect.
Lamby today with no cap.
Careful.
And no good hand. Oh my goodness. The top deck of Studies does salvage this a little bit because he has the potential to put down a minion this turn. And I think Zapper just hitting the board turn 1 versus Paladin would be a very good idea. But he doesn't get that option, so it's probably going to be a Thalnos.
Yeah, I mean, very often in this deck, I do like the curve of Studies 1, Lady Vash on 2, which is what lambyseries is going for. And I think this shows, to me, good level-headed reasoning of where his situation is, because my first instinct was absolutely right on par with you. This hand sucks. You know, action stations, we need to make something happen. But I think it's actually deceptively not that bad. Once you get the Vash down on 2, which can fight back for board a little bit, trade these overdrafts, plus the draws you get from the top, I think this hand is perfectly fine. So just going with the strongest play rather than panic card draw is, for me, very heads up from Lamby.
I think so as well. There's a couple punishes for going for Vash, of course, depending on what type of one-drop Shaxy puts down. If he buffs it with Hand of a Dollar, Noble Mount, it can suddenly take a good trade. But then you can make the counter-argument that the Blood Mage Thalnos also could have been just value traded away instead of traded up into. So I think Lamby here is very much just relying on getting good top decks from here on out, which is something pretty reliable in Burn Shaman. The deck has a low overall curve. He already has one of the most expensive cards in hand, so he is just going for the best board-based approach at the moment, and for now, going to be rewarded because he can take a value trade with the Vash and also bloom out a Cavern.
That's spicy, isn't it? I guess in this situation, the main calculation you need to make is, am I going to need Snowfall Guardian before turn 6? And I think if you factor in the fact you'll get 3 stags, you won't.
The only awkward part is after you bloom, you definitely want to overdraft both to remove a minion and unlock the crystals. But using overdraft, because there's a Divine Shield minion here, doesn't leave the board clean on Shaxy's side. So Lamby here expecting that some sort of buff spell is going to come out on the next turn, but he at least leaves the Vash at health total and attack total, honestly, where it's awkward for Shaxy to trade into it. If there's a buff spell, I mean.
Well, Shaxy's game plan, I think, here by saving the coin so consistently and not going for the, what is it, Stonehearth something. Vindicator, there we go. He wanted to save the Blessing of Authority, right? And then go for the Sunwing Squawker the turn afterwards. The problem is, of course, that demands you to stick a minion on the board. And short of hitting Noble Mount here, I don't think he can guarantee that, because this Hold the Bridge, it gives Divine Shield, great. It sticks 2 minions on board. But that seems very, very flimsy as to whether or not that will actually allow you to stick this board presence.
True. Lamby at the moment doesn't quite have a removal option. Now he does, but that would also cost him the trade with the Stag, which doesn't feel great. So I was actually expecting the turn to start with the trade of the overdraft, because you can't get it in the order you want, where you're overloaded to remove the shield and then you go Lightning Bolt. It's just not going to work out. So I'm surprised to see the insta totem there rather than trade, but maybe he is just going to hold on to the overdraft.
What do you... I know this is so mean, but do you think he was rolling for spell damage?
No. No.
No?
No.
It was so fast, and spell damage would be so good there.
I mean, I think it's more likely that Lamby maybe had it in his head that he could remove the shield with the overdraft and then go lightning bolt, and then backtracked and said, wait, that doesn't quite work. Fortunately for him, he's still ahead on board because of the very powerful effect of Wild Paw Cavern. Still one more stag coming out next turn. And if the Paladin is behind on board, their entire game plan falls apart, right? The deck is so heavily dependent on sticking a threat on board, so then you can cash out on all of these payoff spells. At the moment, Shaxy is really looking to get the Blessing of Authority to land safely so that he can copy that with the Squawker. But with Frostbite picked up now as well for Lamby, I don't think Shaxy's going to have any good targets.
Yeah, and I mean, look at this here for Lamby. Honestly, these hero powers turn after turn are just good enough right now to keep him in this game. Obviously, the stags are what's actually winning him it. But 1/1s to take off Divine Shields, these are all fine as soon as he can get himself attack or heal as well. Those will suit this nicely. And it means that while Shaxy currently has a decent amount of time to get things moving, his game plan is still just so weak. Like using Sunwing Squawker not on the Blessing of Authority here, his whole game plan is just starting to fall apart.
Interesting that he didn't commit the coin to get rid of the Frostbite aura. It still would have let him play the Squawker, just spends all his mana that turn. Maybe he would rather just save that for something else, but I can't really figure out a situation where you wouldn't have had that Frostbite aura removed.
Right.
Because it feels like his out at this point is to find a buff spell for the Samuro, sweep up the board, and try to go from there. But any buff spell will be too expensive to play alongside Samuro with this aura.
No, I do fully agree with you there. I don't think it's like I don't see any real benefit to never playing a spell this entire game, because in that instance there was no downside to playing the coin if you're never going to play it anyway. So you may as well just have gone for it there. Because now if he wants to do it, it's missing a hero power, right?
True. And at this point, I feel like the hero power is too relevant to let go of. It just threatens the 1/1. Maybe with an additional trade, it can make for a cleaner Samuro clear. But Shaxy, one way or another, is starting to pull back into it. Lamby does have Landslide and a trigger on the Overload, but for now is going to cycle with the Wind Chill, it looks like.
I was wondering if he might freeze the Parrot to try and kill the 4/3 with the Landslide, but I guess he's not interested in going with the actual kill on it quite yet. He can just keep getting the chip damage face because, you know, it's all relevant. This isn't Libram Paladin. There isn't that big heal later on, especially with so many Hold the Bridges already having been played.
There's a potential punish for not having used the coin. Stonehearth Vindicator, if it draws Noble Mount for the Samuro, could have played that Noble Mount and cleared the whole board, but now that the Frostbite aura is still intact, that is still going to cost 2. Sorry, I wasn't entirely sure how the interaction would work, but yeah. So now, he probably just holds it instead. I think Shaxy can afford to greed a little bit longer. Okay, now he uses the coin and it just gets much more awkward, right? Because he didn't get rid of it a couple turns ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a super punish, because trust me, Samuro Noble Mount does not work the way you would want it to in the way it combines. But yeah, all in all, just a slightly weird series of plays from Shaxy. I don't know. And like the Noble Mount interaction, I would fully forgive him for it not working how he thought it was. I thought it would end up costing 1, because I've like had a couple interactions lead me to believe that Stonehearth Vindicator just makes all spells cost 3 less, because that effectively makes them all cost 0 anyway. But apparently not. It actually does just set them to 0, and then they can be put back up afterwards.
Right, I confess, I also forgot that it wouldn't get the frenzy with the Divine Shield, but the point still kind of stands. Like, he could have cleared 1 additional minion if he could have Noble Mounted the Samuro this turn, right? Which is still a very big deal, because Lamby is approaching the point where he can stop caring about the board. It can be a Snowfall Guardian angle after shipping some of these minions face, alternatively not even attacking and letting the freeze effect die off immediately the turn after. Sometimes you net more damage that way because there's an attack buff totem on board. And then he does have 2 pieces of burn in hand as well, so it's starting to pile up very quickly.
Yeah, if he's been keeping track, he will know that Samurai plus Blessing of Authority is theoretically possible here. And before he rolled that Taunt Totem, it wouldn't have been possible. But oh no, wait, he was guaranteed it with all of the other 3 on the board. And so without that, the Samurai would have been able to clear the 12-12 by obviously attacking in and then dealing the Frenzy damage as well. But now it can't. That 12-12 is just straight up going to be able to go face.
The victory is
And that's
Shaxy
it.
doesn't even bother. Wow, he wasn't 100% dead there if you had gone for... Oh, wait, sorry. The Taunt Totem does prevent the Samurai also from taking...
Yes.
He wasn't dead on board, though, right? He probably and correctly identified that there was going to be enough burn damage in hand to close out the game. So just throws it down there. But it feels like Shaxy was just not having any more of that there, moving on to a better matchup, because that is kind of what the lineup is supposed to do, right? It takes the L versus Burn Shaman, and then it tries to prey on Demon Hunter with the Paladin, and more importantly, prey on Druid with all of the decks.
It's a weird interaction, isn't it? Because you're absolutely correct in that assessment with specifically the Paladin. But if we look at the other decks, like the Hunter in particular, I feel like the Shaman is kind of a decent matchup for the Face Hunter. I don't know if I'm maybe giving not enough credit to the Shaman's early board-based potential, but I don't know. If you're just using like all these cheap burn spells like Lightning Bolt and Frostbite on a couple of small minions that often have Divine Shield or summon extra copies along the way as well, it can really start to run out of, you can start to run out of resources, and then obviously with no healing in the deck, the Burn Shaman is very, very vulnerable to the Hunter. And so even though the Shaman took an expected win there against the Paladin, that's fine. Maybe the Hunter, and to a slightly lesser extent the Druid, lost a good matchup.
Could be indeed. Hunter's a close one. I completely agree. It kind of depends on the Burn Shaman finding Landslide early enough or blooming out a Cavern. But definitely closer than that last game looked. Anyway, Shaxy going to try again on the Paladin and has a very nice opening hand in the Coin Skulker into Hand of Adal. The fact that Skulker has Stealth is the main part of why you run the card. It's just a nice bonus that you get the discount as well in your deck. And because it's such a very specific curve, a discount can actually turbo out something very powerful like Blessing of Authority. But the Stealth there, making sure you have a buff target, is first and foremost the priority.
Wow, but all of a sudden that actually starts to not be the priority. With Squawker into Squawker picked up, you can get yourself, what, 2 5/5s that draw a card for 4 mana apiece, which is absolutely broken. And even with Bloom Guff, that's a tall order to stand up against all that.
True. Lamby does still have the Lunar Eclipses going for him, and at least he can clear this Righteous Protector first. But
Okay,
we are looking at Coin Squawker into Authority.
I mean, do we even want to do that anymore? I kind of feel like just going Skulker, Coin, Authority, yeah, Authority, or like Authority, Parrot. Like, either way, they are blisteringly powerful plays.
Close, because if you go for the Skulker into Authority, it's actually in 3 turns when you're able to push all of that damage phase, because
True.
You play Skulker, float a mana that turn, the next turn you push 2 Coin Authority, and then you go for the Squawkers. So I feel like even though you do get more overall stats by going for the Skulker into Authority line, I kind of like getting damage now. Okay, Shaxy disagrees though, greeting it out.
A really close one, isn't it? I guess with the way this often pans out, your opponent is only really going to start turning the tide with this deck with Kazakhstan, or maybe Scale of Onyxia, you know, if they can get that exactly on time. And to be honest, the amount of stats you're getting down just contest the Scale of Onyxia so well. You get them basically having to trade in the almost entirety of their board, the vast majority of it at least, and then with just Parrot, they never get a chance to play Kazakhstan without tanking like 11 damage at least.
True. And because of that, Lamby might choose to just tank the 11 here and go for Kazakhstan now, especially that there's a Trog here, which would generate yet another target. It is a full clear with the Scale of Onyxia, including on the 1/2 copy of the Trog. But I wonder if Lamby thinks that's good enough, because now with this draw of Guess the Weight, there's the potential to draw into a Wand of Disintegration and make his life a whole lot easier. Staff? Wait, Krusty probably? Not enough things have died.
Sure, yeah, Krusty makes sense. Mutating, maybe, just to like taunt up a spare scale of Onyxia or something. Like, it's not a great card, but it is tempo.
Yeah. True. Vampiric Fangs. I think Lamby can just go for a heavy slant towards removal here and be in a very good spot. He just needs maybe one value/board creating card to close out the game later on. You could also say Embers on a clearer board tends to close out games. Maybe alongside damage from Scale of Onyxia minions. It's really close, because if he did take Krusty and Staff, that's probably enough removal already.
Oh, well, if one blessing was good, two must be better. Obviously, with a VT available, if you just play it straight up and smack into the Kazakhstan. But at the same time, just making another absolutely huge minion and saying, please no wand, please no wand, please no wand. It's as good a strategy as any, I think.
Right? Leaving up the Kazakhstan maybe creates a punish out for Gnomish Army Knife if Lamby did take that, but maybe Shaxy's playing a mind game, because if I were Lamby here, I don't think I would take the Army Knife. I wouldn't feel like my Kazakhstan was sticking around.
You've got
Going
Lunar
first.
Eclipse,
Scale.
or just Scale, I guess, and you can leave up
A 2/2.
a 2/2? Yeah, sure, plus a 1/2.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward, because if you started with the Lunar and then went Scale, you'd have one additional Trog to deal with.
But he could have lunared the Trog. It was at 2 health.
Oh, you want to Lunar the... true.
It's the same thing, right?
The Kazakhstan in.
Odd breakpoints don't make any difference. I think he just lost an extra 2-1.
Yeah, good catch.
That rope's burning again.
Important part, though, is that he gets to keep the cycle going. He did take Boombox, so this is the one card we were talking about for board presence rather than removal. And he's in a very good spot, because next turn we are just looking at Staff into Boombox or Staff into Ancient Reflections, either of which probably just win Lamby the game.
And so how much damage are we looking at Shaxy being able to push in the next couple turns? Obviously, Blessing of Authority becomes a dubious prospect now, either the actual form or the parrot version, because you're kind of sensing that they're going to be able to kill it in one way or another. And so you could then go for just Mr. Smite, 6 damage right now. You could go for Knight of Anointment to try and find, Hand of Adal, some way to immediately turn up the pressure and try and close out the game, maybe with Carriel into Mr. Smite if they have removal but no healing.
It's a really tough call to make, having seen none of the treasures yet.
True.
Feels like... I was going to say probably just trying to go for the burst game plan is more likely to get you there, because in terms of healing spells, there are less than removal spells in the treasure pool. But the thing is, the clock is actually still so slow for Shaxy, right? If he plays 6/5, pushes for 8 that turn total, it's still quite a long way for Carriel to get through if you assume that your minions are getting removed anyway.
True. Yeah, and I guess if you don't actually put a lot of stats on board, they can just like play a Neuerhorn or play stuff, Boombox, something like that, or even just like Bubba maybe, and their own counter pressure will be enough to kill you before Carriel plus Mr. Smite can take it down. It was, a case of Shaxy just having to guess what he thinks his opponent has, and in this instance, he kind of guessed wrong. It wasn't necessarily to say it was the wrong decision, but it got unlucky with his board being instantly wiped and very little damage actually pushed.
Well, the Carriel manages to clear 1 out of 7 snakes, and 6 are still left, which, they are dealing full damage even through the immovable object, because you round up the half, but still quite scary for Lamby. That's a Gnomish Army Knife now, which is not that much healing at the moment, but it is at least a ton in the way.
Exactly, yeah, because next turn, otherwise, Shaxy just had Hero Power Smite to potentially close out the game if he was able to hit the 50-50 slash 1-3, depending on the draw. But now that's obviously completely out of the question.
So what can pull Shaxy out of this one? The fact that the snakes are poisonous still makes Samuro not triggerable with the frenzy. I mean, does he really just not have an answer for Divine Shield Taunt? It looks that way. I mean, he can get through it the hard way with weapon swings, but that's really slow. And meanwhile, Lamby could draw into... Actually, we've seen all the treasures, right? Yeah, it's these 4 in hand plus Gnomish Army Knife, and none of them buff the snakes. So his healing is actually very slow.
His healing is very slow, and his actual pressure is quite low as well. Obviously, with these minions being played, it gives something for the snakes to sacrifice into to activate Boombox. But here, I think Shaxy has absolutely the right idea. You play both your minions, you press the hero power, and you just make Mr. Smite really, really big. Already a 10 attacked minion, potentially 14 next turn, and that's just going to be lethal if lambyseries can't find the other knife or kill you.
Well, the snake still has Wind Fury, so he can take himself up to 15, to be fair. Still not a relevant breakpoint if Shaxy 100% lands the buff again on Smite next turn, because he would have the 14... Oh, sorry. Yeah, the weapon has to go into a minion here, so Lamby can get out of range. The Hold the Bridge takes that breakpoint up to 16, but that would cost 11 mana. Not playable altogether for Shaxy, including hero power. And now
the other breakpoint is the Krusty right here, coming down with the other Gnomish Army Knife. Even if you're only getting one set of lifesteal, this is this is bringing back the Ziliax days, right? Of just how frustrating it was to play against all this healing, the taunt as well. And now I think lambyseries is starting to get over that crucial breakpoint.
Just slowly but surely with a bunch of 1-1s going face all the time. Samuro into... Nope, they're still poisonous even on Krusty. It just doesn't work.
Hold the Bridge doesn't work. You could go for a Smite. Clear. With Hold the Bridge, but then it just dies. I mean, I guess, honestly, you actually just use the Samuro to kill off the crab, even if it doesn't get the frenzy. Yeah.
There was a line where he could have tried for the 50-50 hero power on the Samuro, plus Hold the Bridge, so he could get the Divine Shield and not give the healing of the 8-14 to Lamby, but that all just seemed very, very lofty indeed. Just so difficult to get past that finish point, and suddenly it's all falling apart for Shaxy. The Druid's gotten through!
The Druid getting through, it's an absolute nightmare, Gia. This was the one thing he didn't want to happen. And it calls into question his early to mid game, because the lines I was looking for, I feel like that's what he was in sync with the whole way throughout. Like, first of all, it was coin, parrot, parrot. Then it was coin, blessing of authority into double parrot. And I think I still would have gone for that line, but you did raise some really good points about alternate ways he could have gone for a little bit of more immediate damage.
Yeah. Admittedly, my line maybe, it probably wouldn't have panned out either, because he would have had 2 5/5s, and then the turn after was Blessing that still couldn't have gone face. So it was probably leading up into a Kazaka-san turn where maybe the Blessing would have let him value trade a bit more cleanly, and he had 2 5/5s going through. But against a Staff of Scales, all of that is sort of a moot point, right? Unless you have exactly enough damage with the Smite. And maybe we could go back and try and math it out, but for now, Shaxy's main focus should be on trying to prey on this Demon Hunter. He has to beat it 3 times, which is a tall order. Maybe the Paladin can do it, but the rest of the decks feel kind of flimsy versus all this removal.
They do. Yeah, it's going to be a weird one for the Hunter in particular. The Face Hunter, I think, is really going to start struggling against this, the Demon Hunter from lambyseries. As we can see here, I was talking about how it's a little bit weaker against aggro, which I do still stand by, those Moags being the big difference maker. It's still really good against aggro. Like, the pure face damage aggro decks, it does a fantastic job. Like Face Hunter specifically, Shadow Priest for the most part as well, excluding the truly nutty draws. You have the Fell Screen Blast, Fell Barrage is not bad either, Immolation Aura fantastic, Aldraki Warblades can get you like 10 health in a turn very easily in the mid game. And then, of course, Jace and Kurtrus to close out the game are very consistent win conditions, even against a prolonged hand from an aggro deck. Against the Paladin, we saw that's not quite the case because they have these big buff effects. The Druid, I think, is the really interesting one, though, because it's right in that middle ground. Like, it doesn't have face damage. It's not a burn deck by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't make these really difficult to deal with minions. It's in a way quite an honest board-based deck where even though it has these very powerful effects it can do in the late game with the Oracle, sorry, I'm forgetting the name, not the Battle God. Sorry, the Battle God, yeah, not the Brawler. The Oracle plus the Battle God plus these extra taunt minions later on in the game, the Annoyatron, the Pack Mule. For the most part, it's just playing out minions on curve and hoping that's enough. And the Demon Hunter can fight back against that pretty well.
Yeah, it's really all about health breakpoints, right? There are certain aggro decks that allow you to buff minions going beyond 6 health breakpoint, which is a very, very important one for Arcanist plus Immolation Aura. There are decks that put Divine Shield on minions that also make it tough for Demon Hunter to clear, but this Druid really struggles to get to those sort of breakpoints. The one thing I suppose that Shaxy would have going for him is that his deck would really make it such that Glide and Outcast position is almost always a benefit to Shaxy. So it could create a situation where Lamby has a dead card in hand. Glide oftentimes the crucial card in so many other matchups, but not one that you would often want to see versus aggro Druid. But here we see Lamby keeping the exact combo we were talking about. Great AoE, perfect removal. Lamby already with a big smile on his face.
It's the absolute juice. Like, you could argue with the old OTK variant that you'd rather have the card draw first, then draw this afterwards. But there's not even that much early card draw in the deck with the Tusk Piercer and the Sigils of Alacrity gone. So this is pretty much just the absolute nuts. And then Double Jump alone, guaranteed to get you either the Glide or the Spectral Sight, will take care of that card draw problem on its own. It's just the dream start.
Not terrible for Shaxy with the opener. Of course, you almost always spend your mana efficiently because the aggro Druid is filled with so many one-drops. At the moment, though, he is going to be very, very sad to see the immediate Arcanist into Fellscream Blast answer. Lamby doesn't even need Immolation Aura. He is just ahead on board right now. The ability to equip Warblades to deal with whatever Shaxy puts forward alongside the 1-3. And the composting off the top after your board has been wiped is just the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah, in one fell, 1L swoop here, lambyseries just completely ruined Shaxy's entire game plan. Like, Peasant is never gonna activate. Composting is never gonna activate. The entire game plan now becomes draw Drekthar into composting on the same turn. Like, that's really the power spike, the out here that maybe we could see Shaxy looking for to pull himself back.
Oh man, it's really saying something when we are looking for a one-of out on turn 4 for Shaxy to be back in the game. Meanwhile, for Lamby, his pick of the litter, honestly, he can choose anything he likes. Goes with a more defensive option in the weapon, which honestly, I expected him just to take Crimson Sigil Runner because I feel that board presence is as valuable as the clear right now because there is just no development on Shaxy's side. Lamby is likely to lose the Outcast effect on the Dreadlord's Bite as well, so I'm not sure if I agree with the pick, but he's still very far ahead. It should be fine.
Yeah, I guess thinking that, like, with Glide being the next card, Glide having a very good chance of being the next card with Double Jump in hand and 5 mana next turn, it was not absurd to expect that Dreadlord's Bite will be a better card later on, post-Glide. You'd rather draw that, just have an immediate guaranteed board clear. But even then, I agree, it was a bit of a close one. Shaxy's starting to find some of those power cards. Like, these are not bad draws, but they're not quite good enough draws yet. So I respect that he's going for the composting just to try and find a couple of card draws while he can, and then setting up for that Oracle of Elune with an Orc Merchant off the top to try and bail him out. This is better of a turn than I was expecting.
It's something that still gets blown up by Immolation Aura, but at least it starts to chew up a lot of Lamby's removal resources here. You definitely cannot play that this turn.
You just can't, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Gonna use second Fell Scream rather than Immo, probably the better decision. It feels like because he's been so ahead on board, taken so little damage, he doesn't have to value the lifesteal that highly, instead values the more powerful AoE effect. Okay.
Okay, that's not bad.
But performers... Okay, how many performers does this take? 6, 8, 14? It's actually a perfect clear with performers.
Exact. Oh my god, it actually is. Is that better than Immo Glide? I guess it is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Magtheridon hits the board as enters the hand as well. Probably unnecessary for Lamby at this point. Kind of hard, honestly, to activate it without Demon Render Kurtrus or without any remaining Fell Scream Blast, but it's all right. Lamby can just go for a glide game plan because at this point, Shaxy's literal only good top deck is Drekthar.
Yeah, we need some crazy squirrel shenanigans, but there it is. It actually is Drekthar off the top. And what are we looking at? Peasant plus Trog? Okay, you know, not bad if there's no immolation aura on the other side.
Even then, the Drekthar's not enough against this Immo. At least it sticks around. Oh my god, the Jace as well. What's this have? Double Fell Scream. And that's it, right?
Okay, so my immediate thought process was you could go Magtheridon Immo just to set up for Jace next turn to clear the board, summon a 12/12. But I guess that's a little bit scary because it gives them an out of composting to pull themselves back into the game.
Yeah, and the problem with the Immo Glide is the Glide will give Shaxy 4 cards because Lamby simply cannot outcast, play it non-outcast and play the Immolation Aura. So I think it might just be Immo pass and then just go Jace the next turn. He really doesn't need the Magtheridon. I love the line that Lamby's taken here.
Yeah, there's no need to take a risk. Like, yes, you would be winning more with Magtheridon, but you would have given them that exact out if he'd played it, which is very cool to see. And, you know, there's no points for winning more than you're already winning. You just want to take the guaranteed line, and I think Jace next turn guarantees it.
The good old 1 minion composting.
That's about as much effort as I put into my composting in real life before just immediately.
Oh, that top deck. That's even better than Jace because Jace had a possibility of clearing its... Did it? No, 1 Immo and 2
I don't even think so.
Yeah. But it could have left itself technically at 1 HP, where Shaxy could have hero powered it down, and then suddenly Lamby's hand is completely dead. But with the Kurtrus, no problem whatsoever. That was just a complete stop, Derek. The Trogs didn't get the job done.
What happened? He was the chosen one. Aggro was supposed to go the full distance here. A little bit of spoilers. My prediction, absolutely down the toilet. I've taken on the curse this year, Gio. It seems with you having won the prediction in the Masters Tour, now my pick of Shaxy is just instantly taking the L. I'm sorry for doubting you, Lamby. I should have known. But, I mean, there it is. The easiest 3-0 sweep of the weekend, even arguably compared to Possessi's win over Hyung earlier on this weekend. Getting us our first finalist here in lambyseries. Already a monumental turnaround for him in Grandmasters, which has just been such a rocky road all the way throughout, having qualified, relegated, re-qualified, sub 50% win rate, never being able to catch that break. Now finally, Gia, in 2022, it looks like it's Lamby's year to shine.
His first weekly win in Grandmasters is so close he can taste it. Lamby has perennially been the top 4 kid. I think he made 1 top 2 before, and here he is again, but never really taking home that big W, and it really matters now more than ever. So I wish him the best, but boy, does he have some big competition on the other side. Whether it's Possessi or Okashinsuke who makes it through, we are going to see a lot of similar decks faced up against each other. Sadly, all of the players who have gone a little bit out there with their lineup have been knocked out now. Shaxy being the last one, and yesterday Mighty and Bank Yugi sort of doing their own thing. It's kind of come to prove that the sort of hybrid decks, very flexible type of matchups, and just overall a tried and true lineup comes out king this week.
Does indeed. And I mean, to speak to Shaxy's favor, even though he does end up losing in the semi-final, it looks like he was onto something here, because heading into today, Paladin was the #1 highest win rate class. I believe it was the lowest sample size at 11 and 6, but it was 4% higher than Druid.